Chapter 6, The Bahamas. I pride myself on having a lot of elderly friends. Two of the mainlanders who comprise that constituency are a Jewish couple called Schmerving and Shmeli Shmezov. I became friends with Schmerving because he found out through one of his subordinates that I was an asshole, and like any older Jew who relishes the abuse of a younger woman with large breasts, he wanted in on the action. Schmerving is a big figure in the music industry and not a very big figure in person. He was an inch taller than Chewy, but that was prior to Chewy having his legs surgically extended. He is a white 60-something Jewish nugget who basically looks like a blonde raisin. I'm not sure exactly what he does. I'm not sure exactly what I even do. But he represents, in some capacity, everyone from the Eagles to Ryan Seacrest to Christina Aguilera. Schmerving was a board member of Ticketmaster, which runs mostly everything involving live events, including Live Nation, the promoter that handles all of my stand-up tours. There is a hairy gorilla in charge of the comedy division at Live Nation who goes by the name of Jeff Wills. I make it my business to harass Jeff on a fairly regular basis, either for having parents who spelled his name the wrong way, or by putting photos of his back on my television show to illustrate the benefits of electrolysis. In Jeff's case, there were none. His hair grew back thicker and sadder. It's unfair that men who have the hairiest backs and the weakest bodies have the least amount of hair on their head. Why transplanting back hair onto the top of a man's head isn't a commonly practiced procedure is mind-boggling. Why pubic hair transplants is not an additional option for those who lose their hair prematurely is even more mind-boggling. I've never met a man who didn't have some pubic hair to spare, and there's no reason obvious to me as to why it shouldn't be used on a man's head to give him back the confidence he lost when his hair fell out. Not to sound like a proctologist, but why shouldn't I take the lead in informing the public about what can be not only an important innovation, but a full-blown game changer? The only potential hiccup I can foresee is if one's hair is straight or blonde, forcing one to mix in tufts of dark pubic hair. So maybe not everyone is a candidate, but redheads certainly are. The idea of a balding redhead finding any other hair match superior is the one surrounding his penis region is not only improbable, it's unheard of. Take, for example, a redhead who doesn't have the typical curly, bright orangey red hair on his head, but the weaker, lighter orange instead, and is considered a redhead only because no one bothered to come up with the term orange head. Even the weakest of species deserves an identity. As if orange heads haven't been through enough, they have to go through life with thinning hair from practically the time they're born until they're wiped clean by age 30. Even these men are candidates because they can still take their curly pubic hair, flat iron it, and install it into their head. There are keratin straightening procedures and Brazilian straightening procedures that can take down the coarseness and the curl from any pubic hair and make it look like head hair. And if the candidate's pubic hair grows straight, which is fairly uncommon and also sorrowful, they get the added bonus of saving the money they had set aside for the hair straightening keratin treatment. Bottom line, this is the kind of thing hair scientists should be exploring, and I'm not going to back down until I see some movement in the pubic community. I met Jeff Wills several years ago on my very first road gig doing stand-up at the Punchline in San Francisco, where I assured him he'd want to stay in business with me because I saw myself going places. He laughed in my face and told me that Pizza Hut had just added wings to their menu and that I should fill out an application with them specifying that I was only qualified to deliver the wings and not the pizza. Just about 10 years later, I was on a sailing yacht I chartered to Croatia with Jeff, his wife, and 10 of our other friends. We were celebrating the fact that I had actually gotten somewhere, and I wanted to celebrate with the people who helped get me there. Parentheses, well, one I actually hadn't ever met before, so she really had no business being on that trip, close parentheses. I took it upon myself to make a toast in Jeff's honor, retell his heartwarming assessment of my talent, and remind him that with just one phone call, I could get him a job at Pizza Hut, and that wings would be a delicacy for him, considering where his career went. I harassed Jeff via email and on television. Most recently, I had an 18-foot ficus plant delivered to his office when he was on vacation. I wanted something that was ugly enough to annoy him and large enough for him not to be able to physically remove without assistance. His ceilings are 16 feet high, so the ficus actually reached the ceiling and then was forced to bend at a 90-degree angle and creep horizontally for the remaining 2 feet. I do my research and I do it well. Parentheses, I actually never do research. I just think things turn out lucky for me. Close parentheses. Schmervin caught wind of my shenanigans and respected my style. He reached out to me via email, introducing himself and volunteering his midget services if there was ever a time Chewy wasn't available. I responded by telling him that he absolutely could fill in for Chewy as soon as he told Christina Aguilera to stop wearing adult diapers on The Voice. He invited me to an outdoor Neil Young concert with his wife Shmelly. She is also a nugget like her husband, but she has a mouth on her like a rugby player who got hit in the head too many times with a cricket paddle. First of all, let me say this. Neil Young was a little before my time, but I grew up with 5 brothers and sisters who played nothing but Fleetwood Mac, Neil Young, the Eagles, and Peter Frampton. I was no idiot when it came to icons, and I wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to listen to the very man who elicits almost every good memory I have from my childhood. Hearing any Neil Young song on the radio will always remind of when I was 6 years old and would watch my brothers playing football on our lawn in Martha's Vineyard with the sun glistening off the water in front of them, the smell of my mom's fresh baked blueberry pie wafting out of the house, and every once in a while, my brothers taking turns lobbing the football to me in my bikini bottom. My dad would be reading the newspaper on the deck facing us, and every so often he would yell inside to my mother to get me a t-shirt. Damn it, Rita! How the hell is she going to grow any boobs if the boys keep throwing footballs at her without a shirt on? I can already see her nipples starting to slope. I'm not a huge fan of concerts because I'm not a huge fan of parking, but I absolutely love Neil Young and know every word to every song he may have ever sang. This will be the day that I die. Every time I hear that lyric, I think of the very day, 3 years after our topless football matches. My mother came to the top of the steps at our house in Martha's Vineyard and looked at me and my 2 sisters, who were all holding ice cream cones, and said, "Your brother's dead." I wanted to meet the man who ingrained that song in my head for the rest of my life. Bye-bye, Miss American Pie. That was what my brother called me, Miss American Pie. I took my boyfriend along to the concert with the Schmazovs, and the four of us walked backstage. Schmerving likes to strut his swagger, so we were whisked to the green room where the families and entourages were all mingling pre-show. "Thanks for coming," the last man I met said. I really had no idea how to respond to that, considering I had no idea whom I was talking to or why he was thanking me for coming. "Well, thanks for having me," I said, searching for something natural to say. I looked down at my huge, oversized suede shoulder bag that my boyfriend had just given me on the aforementioned trip to Croatia, and I realized it would be a mistake to take it outside where it would be on the ground, and most likely covered in my own alcohol by the end of the show. "Would you mind watching my bag?" I asked the stranger, "or just put it back here and I can come grab it from you after the show?" I leaned in and whispered, "My boyfriend just bought this for me, and I think he would be really insulted if I ruined it this soon after I got it. I haven't even had it Scotch guarded." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a box in the Greek theater, sipping on a glass of champagne with a splash of iced tea, when that very same man bounded onto the stage after they announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Young." I looked at my boyfriend, who was shaking his head in typical disappointment, and at Schmerving and Schmelly, both of whom were laughing like Jews who have eaten too much. "You really are an asshole," Schmerving leaned over and whispered. I barely knew any of the songs Neil Young played that night. It turned out that not only could I not pick Neil Young out of a lineup and had him hold my purse at his own concert, but that I was also confusing him with a completely different musician named Don McLean. After that, the Schmazovs and I became buddies, and I spent many nights out to dinner at different events with them and their family. Schmerving, sometimes X, my manager since I don't have one, and I often refer to him and his wife as my parents. Schmelly caught wind of this one day and told me she wasn't old enough to be my fucking mother and to stop referring to her as Mom. The Schmazovs invited my lesbian Shelley and me to the Bahamas on our way back from Africa. This seemed like the perfect pit stop to recuperate from our jet lag on the way back to California. Until Shelley and I discovered that our travel agent had booked us on an around-the-world ticket that flew us all the way back to Los Angeles from Africa and then to the Bahamas. "Where's the North Pole?" I asked lesbian Shelley as I looked at a map of the Galapagos. "And why do we need to fly over it?" 3 days and one travel agent later, we arrived safe and sound in the Bahamas via Atlanta. By this time, Shelley and I had put on an estimated combined weight of 17 pounds, and I hadn't gone to the bathroom in 8 days. This is not an exaggeration. Showcasing our bodies in bathing suits wasn't an option. It was July, and Shelley pointed out it was going to be extremely uncomfortable wearing nothing but our safari gear in the hot sun. I told her that we would simply have to choose off-peak hours to submerge ourselves in the Atlantic. A spray bottle was another option to keep cool during the day. She proposed we wear our khaki shorts over our bikinis. I pointed out that while that was a good plan for her, I was straight. Schmelly and Schmerving brought their 14-year-old son, Schmammerin. He's another asshole, so I immediately took to him. Schmerving tried to convince me all weekend that it would be easier on the whole family if I would just de-virginize Schmammerin over the vacation. He thought Schmammerin having sex would help calm some of his teenage angst, and this way the deflowerer would be someone they approved of, plus it would make for a funny family story. First of all, he's a minor, but that's not my main issue, I revealed to Schmerving after much prodding. He's got braces, and the last time I hooked up with someone with braces, my vagina looked like a cleft palate. The best part of this trip was that the resort where we were staying was managed by a 40-year-old delusional Grateful Dead enthusiast named Sargent, who presented himself in a pressed, pastel-colored golf shirt and khaki shorts, and drove around the property in a golf cart. When I asked him what his real name was, he told me the story of his family coming from a long line of sergeants. That was his real name. He was Sergeant John Riley Black VI. Speaking of black people, I asked Sergeant, where are they? I've heard about you, my dear, he said with raised eyebrows, and waving his index finger in my direction. You are quite the little devil. First of all, please don't make faces like that while talking to me, or just skip talking to me altogether. And secondly, I'm serious. We're in the Bahamas, and I haven't seen one black person. We just came from Africa, and I'm not prepared to go cold turkey. What's the story? He ignored my question, and for the next 15 minutes proceeded to tell me and everyone else within earshot that he was a single man looking for love, and he thought from what he had heard about me, I might be the woman for him. You're wrong, Shelley and Schmelly assured him. Not at all, but I've heard you are pretty outgoing, and I'm pretty outgoing. You've got a sense of humor, and I know how to make a woman laugh. I doubt that, I replied, not on purpose anyway. I had told Sergeant to keep his distance from me, that I wasn't in the mood, nor would I ever be remotely attracted to him. Schmerving and Schmelly loved the idea of me being harassed by Sergeant and invited him to dinner that very night, along with 18 of their other closest friends on the island, all of whom arrived in summer whore, which is another term I use for hot pink. Sergeant arrived, having switched into his dinnerwear, which meant changing out of his pastel blue golf shirt into a pastel pink golf shirt, and keeping on his khaki shorts and leather belt. He planted himself in the seat next to me. I have a question for you, Sergeant. Do you golf? I most certainly do, Chelsea. I may even be able to teach you a thing or two on the back nine, he said, and then winked at me. Lesbian Shelley bore witness to this whole transaction. In her never-ending desire to egg things on, I would refer to her as a pusher or an enabler. She will enable whatever it is you are trying to avoid and wave it around right in front of your face until you take a hit. It's kind of perfect timing if you think about it, Shelley announced to us both. Chelsea's been single for a while, and Sergeant, it seems as if you've been single forever. Sergeant wasn't bad looking, but looks don't matter when you're dealing with someone who thinks they're a mover and a shaker, when in fact that person has never moved or shaken. As I threw back one vodka after another, he regaled me and Lesbian Shelley with tales of his drinking days and claimed that he once knew how to party with the best of them. I used to pull all-nighters 3 times a week minimum. You wouldn't have even recognized me back then. That's amazing, Sergeant. You sound so fascinating. But eventually the cat caught up with the canary, and I wanted to live a fuller life. Is that why you're drinking apple juice? Lesbian Shelley asked him. This is sparkling apple juice, Shelley, he told her. I like a little kick. Are you a Republican, Sergeant? I asked him. Well, Chelsea wouldn't use that word, but I am definitely open to tax breaks for the heavily invested. Then he lowered his head. Do you mind if I call you Chelsea? I would mind that very much. He threw his head back and chortled. It's times like these when I appreciate being sober. I can see the beauty in everything. Well, therein lies your answer, I declared. I would never date a sober person. While I have sober friends who are very much fun, I can tell that you are not. You may think you are, but you're wrong. I love your personality, he said with a laugh. You're a real tough cookie. Everything I heard about you is spot on. Where did you hear all these things about me? I did my research. You won't be an easy nut to crack, but every nut is crackable. You sound like you really know your way around the ladies. Do you mind if I called you Sarge? I asked. I wouldn't mind in the slightest, he said, holding up his sparkling apple cider. 2 clink glasses with my 4th vodka and Lesbian Shelley's whiskey. You should see her in a bathing suit, Lesbian Shelley chimed in, raising her glass to meet his and winking at me. You won't be able to get enough of her curves. Cheers. A bathing suit wasn't a bad idea to get this character off my tail. In the meantime, I reassured Sargent that he and I had nothing in common, and even if he fell off the wagon, we never would. The next morning, I found myself wide awake at 6 a.m. I decided to get up and take a good look at my body in the mirror while everyone else in the house was still asleep. It was a mess, by far the most radical shape I had ever been in. My stomach was in the worst state of its life, with no sign of ribs or abs. Pockets of cellulite circled my belly button, looking like a sprinkled donut. My injured leg was significantly smaller than my uninjured leg. I liked the size of my smaller leg better, and romanticized about how much smaller I'd be if I had just torn both ACLs at the same time, giving way for my whole body to atrophy. I needed to get some exercise and get my juices flowing. Early morning was the time of day when a beach is always the most tranquil, and I figured I could have some me time and reflect on what I expected out of life, and more important, what life expected out of me. I had just read Viktor Frankl's Men's Search for Meaning in Africa, and I thought if a man could survive the Holocaust just by fantasizing about his wife and children being united, I could survive 4 days in the Bahamas looking like a pot-bellied pig. The ACL injury and surgery had done a real number on my self-confidence, my body image, and my lack of being able to participate in any sport except drinking. I was finally at the 1-month mark, which, per my doctor, meant I could start incorporating biking, swimming, and/or rhino poaching into my routine. I decided to take a walk along the beach. The beaches had about as much personality as Sargent. They were flat and straight. From what I could tell, there weren't even waves or a tide. The setting was eerily reminiscent of the movie The Truman Show, a man-made island created for wealthy white people in the Bahamas with not a black person in sight. Due to the lack of terrain, I was able to walk about 30 minutes just past the main beach club before my legs started to hurt. A man was setting out all the beach equipment for the day, and another man was in the water, wearing one of those synthetic water shirts worn by men who are ashamed of their bodies. I exchanged a brief hello with both of them, avoiding eye contact at all costs. I walked a little farther down the beach in order to keep from having any further conversation with the man swimming. I do not and have never liked when grown men wear t-shirts in the sea. A perfect candidate for a pubic transplant, I thought. I got in the water and began my swim back to the house. My Pilates instructor, Andy, who is certifiably batshit crazy, told me if I could tread water for at least 30 minutes, I would burn a significant amount of calories and it would be fine on my knee. I swam for a total of what I would guess to be 3 minutes and was just passing the beach club when I felt a sharp thunderbolt in my stomach. I thought maybe it was a swimming cramp, but after another painful jolt, I grasped that it was quite different and I needed to go to the bathroom. Number 2. It's funny that adults, like babies, don't always know that sometimes a stomachache means they have to make a deposit. Interesting twist, I thought. It had been so long since I had gone to the bathroom that I had begun the process of accepting that I might never move my bowels again. I picked up the pace a little faster in order to get back to the house in time for my explosion. This was a surprise, after all, and not an unwelcome one. I gracefully transitioned from doggy paddling to the fly to a full-on panicked freestyle. When the thunderbolt started to become increasingly unbearable, I realized I didn't have the 10 to 15 minutes it would take me to swim back to the house. Time was not on my side. I knew I couldn't be in the ocean. Even I wouldn't do something like that. So I opted to swim to shore, go back to the beach club, and find the bathroom. I hauled ass as quickly as one with a bum leg can effectively haul ass, and made it halfway up the beach before it became crystal clear that I had about 30 seconds to find a place to squat. Let me declare something. I am not a quitter. I will turn over every stone or grain of sand before I submit to the callings of Mother Nature. My brain was weighing all options, but the only option that was not an option was shitting my pants while standing up. I found the nearest dune, hobbled over to it, and pulled down my bathing suit bottom just in time for me to detonate. I could not believe this was happening to me. I felt blades of grass from the dune gently caressing my backside as I scanned east to west to ensure no one could see what was happening. Meanwhile, one fulmination after another ricocheted out of my asshole, onto the sand, and back onto my calves. Dear Lord, I muttered, looking up and trying to find any sign of God. The man from the water in his onesie had somehow disappeared, either out to sea to continue his life as a male mermaid, or out of the water, but he was gone, and that was the most important thing. There was a mega yacht parked a few hundred yards out to sea, but I deduced that since I couldn't see anyone, no one without binoculars could see me. It was too late anyway. What happened had already happened. I had shat myself on a beach like an animal. Like any normal lady who hadn't gone to the bathroom in 8 days, I wanted to look at my excrement with pride and assess how much weight I had lost, but I was too appalled by the way the events had transpired. I grabbed a bunch of sand and covered my shame while rivulets of sweat dripped off my forehead. Forgetting that my hands were covered in sand, I swiped the sweat that was dripping down my face and ended up wiping sand all over my forehead, giving myself an early morning exfoliation. I pulled my bikini bottoms up as loosely as possible and awkwardly sauntered back into the water, trying to avoid major contact between my ass and the hammock that was my bathing suit. Once submerged in the sea, I rinsed myself off. First down below, and then my face. Looking back on that moment with more mental acuity now, I realized what I had actually done was dive into my own feces. Well, this will make an interesting story, I said aloud to myself. I remembered a dinner party at Shmelly Shmazov's house not long ago, where a bunch of famous people went around the table telling their worst shit and diarrhea stories. By the time it came around to me, my friend Shmarli Shmeron looked at me and said, "Well, Chelsea, we saved the best for last. Let it rip." "I know you may all find this hard to believe," I announced to the table, "but I can honestly say I've never shit my pants. I know you probably think that's something I would do, but sorry to disappoint. I am not a pig from hell. I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but I haven't done it, and I can't say that I ever will." "Oh, come on," Shmarli's groaned, "like any of us believe that." "Listen up, girls. I have not shit my pants. I have peed in my pants several times due to excessive laughter, and I have dated several men who have shit their pants in my presence, once even in the bed while we were sleeping. And I'm willing to tell you that story, but I will not make up a shit in my pants story in order to make friends with famous people." As I swam back to the house, I reflected on the irony of that night and looked forward to the next dinner party where I would be able to add more to the conversation. Then the thunderbolt hit me again. My asshole wasn't done with me. I had to go again, and this time it wasn't going to be nearly as graceful. I ran out of the water and managed enough wiggle room to make it all the way back to the beach club. "Hello," I wailed. "Someone? Anyone? Sergeant?" There were 4 small tented buildings, and I hobbled to each one, but everything was closed as it was before 7 a.m. Where the hell did that onesie guy go when I needed him? I had to make another executive decision. The dunes were too far behind me now, and the closest objects were 3 kayaks and 2 water tires. I reached around and felt the back of my bathing suit bottoms, which were rapidly filling up with my own entrails. They had essentially turned into a diaper. Africa was coming out of me, and I could not stop it. "Oh my gosh, this is the worst. You are the worst," I told myself as the culprits slid down my good leg. I headed toward the kayak, leapt in just as my bikini bottoms were about to give, and emptied the rest into the kayak. I had never felt so defeated. I had no choice but to give up and let everything come out that was supposed to. "Goodbye, Africa," I declared to the sea. Simultaneously, I spotted the same yacht from a few minutes before, and my anxiety kicked back into full gear. In an effort to deflect attention from what I was actually doing, I picked up the oar that lay next to the kayak and started rowing in the sand. By this juncture, I had lost at least a gallon of water and sweat, and was basically urinating out of my asshole. I won't deny that as humiliated as I felt, I couldn't wonder how much weight I had lost. I had to consider what my next move would be, and how I would get this mess cleaned up without anyone seeing anything. I also knew that another bomb could drop at any moment. I couldn't bear to look down. I've seen photos of Hiroshima, and I was not interested in revisiting the site. There is a reason diapers are held together by tape, I thought to myself. I got up out of the kayak and saw that my lower body was a disaster. I threw myself into the sand and rolled around in it like I had just been thrown from a burning building. Minutes later, I was camouflaged well enough to make the trek into the water. My leg was throbbing as this was the most activity it had seen in months. I hopped as quickly as I could to the ocean and then dove headfirst into a half a foot of water. My bikini bottoms came off and I rinsed them. Then I scrubbed my whole body with sand, sea, and whatever fish were swimming by. Once I was able to comport myself with some degree of dignity, I made my way out of the water and back over to the kayak to clean up my mess. I dragged the kayak over to the dunes about 25 yards away, where I had given birth to my first child. Once there, I sat down to take a break. Not only was I in a tremendous spiral of shame, I was also in a tremendous amount of pain. But the fighter in me was not going to give up until justice was served. When I caught my breath again, I turned the kayak upside down and emptied whatever I could into the dunes. I shook it repeatedly and slammed it into the grassy sand until I got everything out. After covering my abomination with more sand, which I had to transport from the beach below using my hands as a pail, I dragged the kayak into the ocean to finish the job. Once in the ocean, I flipped it over and used the seawater to wash out any remaining debris. Once I was satisfied on that front, I dragged the kayak back to the beach, placed it somewhere near where I found it in the first place. I looked at the 2 water tires, grateful that I hadn't made the wrong decision and chosen one of them. It was time to go back home. Do I swim or walk? That is the question. I rinsed myself in the ocean one last time and then decided to walk back very closely to the dune line. My bad leg had become swollen and I needed to ice it. What I thought would be an innocent walk/swim had turned into a full-blown Ironman. I told myself it could have been worse, but I knew it couldn't have been. I focused on the weight loss. I wouldn't be able to get a proper look at my stomach until I got in front of a mirror. I got excited at the prospect of sharing my news with everyone. Once the house was in view, I attempted to actually skip, but stopped myself when my knee buckled. I got back to the house, walked upstairs to my room, took my bikini bottoms off, wrapped them in toilet paper, walked downstairs and threw them in the kitchen trash. I grabbed my traveling ice pack out of the freezer and headed back upstairs to Lesbian Shelley's room. Just then I heard the sound of something pulling into the driveway. I ran back down, looked out the window, and saw that it was my boyfriend, Sergeant. Well, I thought if there's one way to get this loser off my tail, it's to show him my body in its current condition. I made a bold decision and opened the front door. "Good morning, Sergeant," I exclaimed, covered in sand, sweat, and whatever else had managed not to come off in the ocean. "Well, good morning, Chelsea," he replied, as he slowly took my body in. "I didn't expect you to be up this early." "Oh, I just went for a little jog on the beach. I'm actually glad you caught me before I showered. I want you to know this is what my body looks like in a bikini. You're probably used to much more well-proportioned women," I declared, jutting my bad leg out front and center. "Not at all," he smiled and started walking toward me. "Every woman's body is different. I've been around enough to know that." This guy was even more annoying in the light of day. "I'm going to run up and shower," I informed him. "Hopefully we'll get to spend the day together as usual." He nodded. "I'd love that." I closed the door inside and headed upstairs into Lesbian Shelley's room. "It's time to rise and shine. Have I got a story for you?" She lifted her eyeshades and looked at her watch and then regarded me groggily. "Well, your hair is wet, and I know that's not from a shower, so I take it you've been swimming?" "That's right," I told her, not to sound conceited, but this is probably one of my top 10. "Well, I guess so," Shelley said, "because you're not wearing any underwear." I looked down at myself and realized I had never replaced my bikini bottoms. "Whoopsie," I declared, then shut her door and walked back to my own room and put on a cape. Later that morning, I waited until everyone had gathered around the kitchen table with full breakfast plates and regaled the family with my morning's activities. One of the other house guests staying with us that weekend became so disgusted halfway through my description, he got up, excused himself from the table, and went outside to smoke a joint. Men like that have never understood women like me, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. Later that day, Sergeant drove us to the boat in his golf cart so I could head back to LA to start shooting after lately. I casually mentioned that I left him something special in the yellow kayak on the beach. The next time I heard from him was a couple of weeks later via email. Schmerving had been kind enough to give Sergeant all my email info. As per usual, these emails have not been modified or exaggerated for effect. This is the kind of thing that happens in my life on a more than regular basis. You could say that I invite this behavior, and you would be absolutely right. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, hey. Date Friday, July 2012, 5:29 a.m. Hey there. There have been a lot of sweet thought about you as well since you guys were here. Instant attraction in so many different ways. My sign is Scorpio. All I know is what I hear. Stubborn and a passionate lover. Irving and Glenn have invited me and another, namely you, to join them in Las Vegas for the Eagle Show, which falls on my birthday, November 17. I would love for you to join. We must. It is weird when you meet someone for such a short time. In such a place as this, you put a smile on my face. Butterflies like a 12-year-old passing a note asking, will you go with me? Check yes, no, maybe. As far as urination, I did answer the question yes when you asked. The story goes, I was minding my own business back in 1981, listening to a shitty version of Uncle John's Band and sipping on my grandfather's stolen rye whiskey while sunbathing on a rock off the coast of Maine when my older cousin decided, for no apparent reason, to relieve himself on my chest. It was quick, painless, warm, and over within 6 seconds. Kind of like getting laid for the first time when I was 14. Another great story. Have a wonderful day, knock 'em dead, and if it comes easy, take it twice. Please, let's stay in touch. If I could wake up every day with a handy fix, life would be even better. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, hey you. Date, Friday, July 2012, 10:05 p.m. Fuck. The 17th is the day I am getting my vaginal rejuvenation. If you're serious about starting to date, then I can move it up, but there is a 2-week recovery period. Parentheses, no sexy time. Close parentheses. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, hey you. Date, Saturday, 21 July 2012, 6:46 a.m. I think you move it up. I think we would have a blast. I can take care of the rejuvenation. I am totally serious about the trip. A peaceful, easy feeling. And I know you won't let me down. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, hey you. Date, Tuesday, 24 July 2012. Hey, Major. I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. Just hoping I didn't scare you off. Are we still good for the 17th? And do you like blowjobs? From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, hey you. Date, Tuesday, 24 July 2012. Hey there, you sexy beast. Answers, no you didn't. Yes, we are. Absolutely. 100%. I am driving outside of Atlanta, one hand on the wheel, and now one hand on my Johnson, a recipe for highway disaster. I will email with all of the horny details when I get situated. And then it goes back to the book and then with the parentheses. This is when I started blind copying half the people on my email list. One hand on my Johnson is by far the most compelling quote I've read since the autobiography of Thomas Jefferson by Thomas Jefferson, close parentheses. Then back to the emails. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, and then it's a JPEG file name. Date, Thursday, 26 July 2012, 11:34 p.m. Here you go. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, this JPEG thing. Date, Friday, 27 July 2012, 12:32 a.m. Phenomenal, please more. I would return the favor, except I just got out of a cold shower, and my Big Johnson is more like Little Jack. I need to let Jack and the twins warm up a bit. To be continued. Love ya. And the picture that Chelsea sent Sergeant is her in a pretty outfit with a lacy bra, like squishing her boobs up, smiling, with her blonde curls in charming disarray. Back to the emails. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 1:59 p.m. Are you fucking with me, Sergeant? Why won't you send me a photo? What gives? From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 2:01 p.m. I would never fuck with you. I have been on the road for 3 days. Expect photos by day's end. Love ya. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 2:04 p.m. If I don't get those photos, the 17th is off the calendar. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 4:13 p.m. You're such a hard ass. Thanks for yours. They left a lot for the imagination. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 4:20 p.m. Sergeant, I deleted in my excitement. Please resend. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, IMG, JPEG. Date, Saturday, 28 July 2012, 1:24 p.m. Are you joking? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I deleted on my end too. Have to wait until the next shower this eve. I'll hook you up. How's everything going? What's new in your world? Question mark, question mark. Was just down at your house here on the island, wishing we were poolside. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, so you've lost that love and feeling. Date, Thursday, 2 August 2012, 7:59 a.m. Hey, what's going on? Did you forget about me? Question mark, question mark. I sent you another pic. It's very sad. Miss ya. From Chelsea to Sergeant, subject, so you've lost that love and feeling. Date, Thursday, 2 August 2012, 11 a.m. Sorry. At the Olympics. From Sergeant to Chelsea, subject, so you've lost that love and feeling. Date, Thursday, 2 August 2012, 11:07 a.m. Don't forget those who admire you most. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Have fun. The next and last time I ran into Sergeant was at a Lakers game. I was with the same lover I had taken to see Neil Young, and again, courtesy of the Schmezoffs. Sergeant came to say hello, and I introduced said lover to him. Timing is everything, Sergeant, and I think we may have missed our window. We were close, but not close enough. I'm not someone who easily forgets. Chelsea. Schmerving leaned in and whispered to my boyfriend, this is the kind of shit she stirs up when you're not in the picture. Then he turned to me in front of Sergeant and couldn't get through his own joke without spitting bits of popcorn into my open mouth. Where's a kayak when you need one?